Hello guys, here's a new tutorial for Blender and 3DCoat, in which I use stencils and the cutoff tool to create this thing here. I don't know what it actually is. Okay, maybe, but I use this shape to be able to demonstrate radial symmetry in 3DCoat. Okay, here's the simple mesh in Blender, and I added a subdivision surface modifier. It's a hard surface mesh and I want to make it look really smooth and crisp. Let's have a look at the statistics. You find this here now in the overlays in Blender 2.91. And you see it has about 90k vertices. But before I export it to 3DCoat, I will remesh it to about 1 million vertices. First I apply the subdivision surface modifier. Then I switch to sculpt mode and remesh it using the voxel remesher. I set it to a quite high resolution and also enable the smooth normals option. I want to have a high poly but smooth hard surface mesh. Okay, I press remesh and the result is about 1 million vertices. But this is just one way to create this high poly mesh. So let's have a look at the different possibilities. As I mentioned, voxel remesh to the desired density and then export the mesh. The other way, before exporting, you add a multi-resolution modifier and then you subdivide. Also pretty good and non-destructive. And the other way is just to export the object and then you increase the resolution in the application like 3DCoat, where you want to add the details. In my opinion, all these options work pretty nice. Anyway, we have to export. I go to object mode and then select the object and press File Export FBX. And here I choose to export the mesh only and only the selected objects. And then I export it, for instance, as stencil 1 FBX. Okay, nice. Now we can open 3DCoat, select voxel sculpting. Then I want to have an empty scene. And then I import the object, the FBX that we exported. I select it, press open, and you see it is extremely fast. I really have to know this algorithm. Okay, here's the object. You can press apply and it will be added to the scene. And then I select a different brush, for example the build-up, because we will need it in a moment. Okay, before I start adding the details, I increase the resolution. I press the space bar and select Res Plus to double the resolution, and this should be dense enough to add finer details to the mesh using stencils. I also select a different shader. This is a clay shader. I think it's this one, but I want to have a metal or gold shader. Yeah, that's my favorite one. Press the Alt key to be able to zoom when you have the right mouse button pressed, or the middle mouse button to pan. Left mouse button and the Alt key pressed you can rotate, and when you press the Shift key you can snap the view. Okay, let's have a look at the built-in stencils, black and white images that we want to use to kind of paint details to the mesh. So we have these patterns here, then these circles, gradients, and also the lines that I want to start with. First I switch from perspective to orthographic view. And then I go ahead and select a stencil image, a texture. Okay, here you see you have these tiny lines and a gizmo. With that we can scale, rotate or move the texture. Before I start painting the lines onto the mesh, I press the S key to enable radial symmetry. Because the object is round and I want the stencil to affect all sides of the object. I increase it to 7, this should be enough. And now I zoom in, and to transform the stencil, you can either use the green gizmo or the icons in the toolbar. It takes a while to get used to it, but once you found it out, it's really comfortable. When you press the right mouse button over the center point of the gizmo, you can toggle its visibility. Okay, we have the build-up brush selected. Now I'll move these lines over the top part of the mesh. I decrease the depth of the brush a bit. Then I select this stroke for painting. And then just paint over these lines with the left mouse button pressed. And here you see the effect. It's so simple. And you see the performance is great, there's no lag, nothing. So let's continue. Again, I will use the line, the single line, to add it to the part at the bottom. I move the stencil upwards and then just paint over the line. And it is added to all the sides because we have radial symmetry activated. Okay, a nice kind of bevel or border. I add another one. Okay, looks nice. And now let's add a different stencil, for instance here these squares. First I scale down the stencil so that we have really tiny squares. And again I will paint over this, but this time I use a different stroke. I use a rectangle. That's a fast way to do it, and there's no variation in the stroke. We just add this pattern. And of course the radial symmetry is still applied. I decrease the depth a bit and then I draw this rectangle. As you can see, it's totally simple, but the effect is great. Now do the same for the part in the middle, with a stencil that has even more details. And again I use the rectangle. Okay, it looks better and better, and now let me carve in a ring to the part at the top. So I snap the view like that, and then select these round stencils. They are very small, so I reset the stencil. Then I bring it here to the center and scale it. And before I paint, I invert the tool, the brush, so that I can paint this ring into the mesh. Very nice. Yes guys, that's also sculpting. And you don't need a tablet, you just need good stencils. And another tool that I want to show you is the cut off tool. That's the tool that I'm missing in Blender still. It's like the clip brushes in ZBrush, but this one is, in my opinion, better and more reliable. So let's see this here in action with radial symmetry and the rectangle stroke. I just cut out a part of the mesh, and it is applied in a circle with radial symmetry and extremely fast. What's the secret? You can do this wherever you like. And let me add another one here to the bottom part. Perhaps a bit bigger. Yeah, pretty nice. I call it done now. It's hard to stop it because it's addictive. But I think you get the idea. If you want to render it, you can switch to the render room. I like to add a light and rotate it a bit. Set the height of the light and the intensity or the color. And once you're happy with the scene and the settings, you can render it as image. Okay, this was my a bit different tutorial for Blender and 3DCoat working together. If you have any questions, add these to the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and if you like it, follow me on my Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, be my patron, this would be great. And I'll see you in the next one here on Jayanam.